Welcome to One on One on God 101. Our guest today is Survivor Season 44, Carson. Carson, hello, welcome.
Thank you so much, Julie, for having me on. I am such a big fan of your podcast. Me and my sister listened to it. We text about it, and when I got this opportunity, we were both freaking out together. So I'm just so excited to be talking to you and get to meet you and discuss God and my life after Survivor, whatever we want to talk about.
All God's hands is meant to be. God knew we'd
Exactly.
be sitting here having this conversation. So, the first question, as you know, is always I ask our guest, did you grow up with God in your life, knowing Him?
I did. I grew up in the Presbyterian church. It was very normal for me and my family to go to church every Sunday. And I have a big family. So my grandparents, my cousins, who are also my best friends, it was a family thing every Sunday that we would go to church and then, leave church and actually go to my dad's deli and talk about, what we learned that day. And so it was very much so not only an individual journey of learning who God is, but also somewhat of a family bonding experience. And so I'm very thankful for having such, faithful and grounded family members who have, allowed me to grow up in this church and have stood by my side during times of doubt or things, times where I was questioning my faith. And so I am here today as a proud Christian and very thankful for the journey God has given me.
What did make you question your faith? And how did you get through it to stay faithful?
Right. I think every Christian or even someone who is not faithful and maybe is atheist or any of that has gone through a time where they question their existence, what death means, what their place on this world means to them and in the greater scope of the world. And so maybe I'm a very thoughtful high schooler, but like that was something that always was interesting to me and something that I dealt with, and especially learning about science and evolution and the Big Bang and becoming more and more interested in how the world formed and evolution and all of that, those interesting scientific topics. I was led astray. I saw the world as either you either believe in science or you believe in religion. And I didn't ever think that those two worlds could coincide and actually coexist. And that, and so I did a lot of deep reflection within myself, as well as in the Bible and learning, and even with science. And my favorite chapter of the Bible is Genesis, and it's a lot of people see it as more figurative and not literal. Some people do see it as literal, but for me, I see it as God, or I have to put myself in the context of when the Bible was released to the world, thousands of years ago. We didn't know that the earth was even around at that point. So how is God going to put a scientific description of the creation of the world in a time and talk about it in a time where we don't even really understand where we fit in our solar system? And if you look at the order of, let there be light, the 7 days of creation, and you think about what we know with science today, animals came before humans, or light came before, the world, and all those different things. It's actually crazy because the timeline that we agree with science is the same timeline that's in the Bible that was written thousands of years ago. And for me, that was when I remember reading that. I hadn't read this online. I wasn't looking this up, and both worlds clicked. And I was looking it up. And I was like, wait, did that happen before this? And it's in the Bible this way. And that was a moment for me that I remember so vividly, because that was when I became a real believer, not just one where I believed what my parents believed. And so that really has transformed the way I look at the world, my beliefs, and even science. It's why I love my job studying the solar system, because it's a constant reflection of the beauty of the world that we live in, that I believe that God has created for us.
Absolutely. I've said it before. To me, God is science.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
he is time, he is everything. Um, so are you a still at NASA? Are you a NASA space engineer, and are you still studying? Are you a student or are you working?
So I'm both. Yeah, it's so the program I'm in is called the NASA Pathways program, and so it's the purpose is so that when you graduate college, you're immediately able to transfer to being full time at the Space Center. So I'm over at Johnson Space Center. We focus on human space flight. So right now we're really diving into the Artemis program, which has its eyes set on sending humans back to the moon and then eventually Mars. And so right now, we're targeting 2025 for sending a crew of 4 around the moon, and then not fully set in stone, but we're looking around 2026 and beyond for sending people to land on the moon again. And then eventually we have our eyes set on Mars through the Space Launch System program or Artemis program. And so I'm still in school, but I'm also currently I'm working at the Space Center. I'm focusing on Windows. This past week, I got to touch an International Space Station window that had come back down and they replaced. And so there's some really cool opportunities and things I get to see at the Space Center. And yeah, and so I hope to graduate around 2025 or 2026. But every time I set a date, it changes, and that's okay. So
God's in control. That's okay.
exactly. Yep.
God's plan. That always prevails. Working and studying in science in your field, and you are in Texas. I wonder, do most people feel the way you are? Are they people of faith and science and acknowledge what you just spoke about?
I have been very surprised by the amount of believers in the science community at NASA. I have a lot of good friends and who I didn't know were believers at first, and then we're talking, and then just somehow we land on the topic, and we're like, "You too." And so, for example, this past week, one of my good friends that I met this past summer working on some of the space controls for one of the rockets that will go up and around the moon. We were talking about, we somehow landed on the subject and found out we were both believers. And so he invited me to his church, and apparently there's astronauts there. And so, yeah, it's surprising because a lot of times I think it's scary to talk about it because you don't want to offend someone or impress upon them your beliefs. But at the same time, it's you by like being open and able to have an open dialogue about your beliefs and other people's different beliefs. It's sometimes surprising. You're like when you find out that you both share the same ideals, and so that I have been very surprised by that, and also empowered because I'm like, I'm not alone.
That's encouraging to hear.
Right.
Talk to me about Survivor. Did you made it like 25, 26 days, like you came in
25. Mhm.
fourth
Yeah.
out of 18 survivors. Did that experience have any effect on your faith?
It did. The spiritual journey I went before Survivor, throughout Survivor, and after Survivor has been an up and down roller coaster of of battling at first the how scary it was and leaning on God and the Word and then like trusting Him to put me in a position and a spot on television where I can not only reflect his truth and his being, but also be myself. And so I even the lying aspect, there was a lot of things I battled with internally of, is this right? Does this agree with my faith? And I looked at Survivor and I said, what's the difference between Survivor and a game like Two Truths and a Lie? Two Truths and a Lie, you're supposed to lie. Like that's the point of the game. There's one part that's a lie, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with playing that game. And that's kind of how I look at Survivor. Even though like I don't lie in my real life, or I try not to. We all do at points, but I try not to. I didn't feel as though on Survivor, like, playing a game of deceit and deception, that's kind of part of the game rules. And so that's how I looked at it. But looking at my spiritual journey, out there, it was a lot of stress, of deprivation, not eating, not being able to talk to your family and stuff like that. And so it was a struggle, and I had to lean on him in a lot of ways, by praying and even just like at night, looking at the stars and being like, either way, it doesn't matter what I do here. I am just like a tiny fleck in a massive world that, and so, if there's any way I can reflect his image, I will try to do that. And after Survivor, it's a battle of how do I not idolize my journey myself on the show, and tell myself, and allow myself to trust in him and keep my eyes focused on him and not get swayed by these worldly things, the quick fame or whatever you want to call it. And so it's definitely a journey. I'm constantly going up and down, but at the same time, in my heart, he is at the forefront of my life. And that's my truth.
So how do you stay? What has worked for you to stay in your faith and not get seduced by these worldly things and these false idols?
Yeah, it's a struggle it's, even with the show, it's so easy to get caught up in the attention and the temporary feelings of sustenance that you get from the attention on you, and then afterwards it goes away, and you're like, that was a fleeting experience. And um it's definitely been a struggle for me. I have learned a lot about myself and about my faith, and I'm still battling it today. Where even at NASA, there's constantly like I have to battle. I'm not, I have to stop putting myself at the center of the world and start putting him at the center of my world. And it's a constant battle of that, of these idols that come into play. And you're like, I idolize food. I idolize, playing Minecraft with my friends. And then and then that time I take away from my focus on him. And you can do all those things at once, but it's important for me to try to keep my attention on him, whether that's just, in the shower every morning, thinking about like how I'm so lucky to be here, and all of the gifts that he's given me in my life, and praying and talking to him and keeping an open dialogue.
You used the word scary before talking
Yeah.
about Survivor. What was scary?
I was terrified of being 20 years old and then coming back from a show and maybe not having the best experience out there, or maybe having been out early or done something I regretted, and then having that being watched by millions of people and being judged by that, um, and then having to grapple with being publicly disliked. I mean, that was something that I was preparing for mentally, like, was the potential backlash of maybe doing something wrong or something I regretted, whether that was a game move or an accident with like, I don't know. There was so much, I had to trust God to be there for me in the trials of Survivor. You're not eating for weeks. I mean, you get as hangry as you can get. And so there was all of that was very scary for me, was the unknown. And I think it's just like every day in our own lives, we fear the unknown. What if we don't get this job? What if this thing that we're hoping for doesn't come true? And so, yeah, for me, I was battling that, and I'm grateful for being able to keep my eyes focused on him, but also be able to get through the trials and know that he's there with me.
In the final seconds, did it change you for the better?
I think Survivor and my faith has definitely changed me for the better. I'm so happy I'm back at work and studying space. And also, I started my own little business called Puzzle Knot, where I sell 3D printed puzzles. And so the opportunities it's given me has been so amazing. And I'm so thankful for my time on Survivor and after Survivor. And it's been amazing.
Carson, I thank you. Keep being a reflection of Christ and keep believing.
Thank you so much, Julie.